So is it true that the Hainanese have the best chicken rice?
It's quite hard to answer this question. Hi everyone, I'm Bok Cheng Chong. I'm the Deputy Secretary General of Singapore Federation of Chinese Crank Associations. Most of the crank association, when they was first formed, some of them actually 100 years ago, that was the time that Singapore is still a colonial state. And at that time, when we have our forefathers who actually came from different parts of China, so when they came to Singapore, the support systems from the colonial government may not be as strong as what we have today. So that was the time when the Chinese Crank Association started to be formed. And one of the key objectives is to help the early migrants from a different part of China to get settled in Singapore and to also take care of their welfare, their jobs. Some even actually provide accommodations for them when they first came to Singapore. By and large, actually, there are two ways that the Crank Association organize themselves. One would be actually by the kinship. Usually we look at the family name as a kinship. So you can have our Tan's Crank, Lee Cranks, Teo clans. The other way that the Crank Association will form is actually by locality. So when you talk about locality, it can be actually representing dialect groups because people who speak the same dialects typically come from a certain region. It can also actually be formed based on the provincial of China. You can have a Canton's province, you can have the Fujian's province. So typically, I think that is how most of the Crank Association actually organize themselves. If you are actually referring more to the dialects group, what are some of the traits that they are famous for? Sometimes people tend to associate Hainanese with good food. Hokkien, many of them are in trading business. Cantonese, well, I think they are equally good in running restaurants.
So is it true that the Hainanese have the best chicken rice?
It's quite hard to answer this question. Many people tend to perceive that, oh, cranks seems to be like a gang. But if you actually trace back to the history of Crank Association, they are formed to help their fellow migrants from either a same family names or a same region. Perhaps that could be the reason that people may perceive them like a gang that protect their own members. But I think it's not really a gang, but it is true that they are set up to help and to support their fellow members. So for many of the Crank Association, actually they have been playing quite an important role in the early days in terms of supporting education. There are still schools that are affiliated to Crank Association. The 5 primary schools under Hokkien Hui Kwan, we have Ai Tong, you have Tao Nan, you have Guanghua, you have Nanqiao, and you have Chongfu. Besides schools, besides educations, there are also hospitals. The Gong Wai Shiu Hospital is one example that is being actually still managed by the Cantonese Crank. We also have religious institutions like temples that are being actually run and managed by the Crank Association. One example would be the Tian Hokkien by the Hokkien Crank. We have the Yue Hai Qing Miao, which is actually managed by the Teochew Crank. When Singapore actually gained independence, the government sort of started to introduce many of the government support scheme and program. So that to some extent actually make it that the role and functions of Crank Associations start to actually get diluted. I think the other reason is that as we have more locally born Singaporeans, especially the younger generations, that affiliations to where their grandparents were born in China is weakening. I think the identity is actually more affiliated to being a Singaporean. I would see it as the mission objective of many of these Crank Associations remain by and large the same, to help the community, to support the community, to promote a certain culture. Some of these cultural activity like lion dance, dragon dance, the Hesan Huiguan, the Guangzhou Huiguan, they still have pretty strong lion dance troops to continue to promote this lion dance culture. This is another role that many of the associations are now taking on. They provide platforms for new migrants from China to join the kind of association activities and provide a chance for them to interact with our local Singaporeans. There's another activity that many kind of association has been doing, which is actually to organize trips to visit the regions that the kind of association is representing. I know that they have also been able to attract a lot of young people to join those trips who have an interest to find out more about where their grandparents actually come from. There are kind of associations who organize youth activities, for example, a friendly soccer match with a non-Chinese. Some are actually opening up to conduct learning journeys for students, whether it's Chinese or non-Chinese students, they get to visit some of the kind of association. So these are actually what we are seeing as interactions between the kind of association as well as the non-Chinese communities.